Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Homeschool Minnesota. My name is Dale Annand. Today, I have Amy Hughes here to talk about her upcoming book, Words Like Honey. It's due out on September 9th. And so it's coming up really quick here. In her book, Amy writes about our words profoundly shape our children's development, confidence, spiritual formation, all the things that, we don't often think about when we're in the throes of parenting and things are happening fast and furious and words just come spewing out of our mouth. But we need to be intentional. And that's Amy's challenge to us as parents, is to be intentional. And so I just want to welcome Amy. Thank you, Amy, so much for coming today. Tell us about yourself a little bit.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I have 9 kids. We've been
Wow.
homeschooling for just finished up 18 years. We live in California. Yeah, I do homeschool and parent coaching and all that good stuff.
Yeah. You're on a lot of different as I was going through all the information I have on you, I was noticing that you've been on quite a few podcasts, but you've also just you've written other books and other things. What are some things that you write about that is in your heart?
Yeah, I write a lot about kind of the just having a peaceful homeschool.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of, especially since 2020, when so many parents started homeschooling unexpectedly and they just decided to keep their
Yes.
kids out, there's a lot of, there's just a lot of confusion because for parents who have been homeschooling for a long time, we've gone through this process. We have a lot of us have deschooled, have kind of gotten over these school mindsets that were built into us as children.
Yeah.
Newer homeschooling parents are coming in excited, but scared. They haven't broken away from some of those arbitrary things. And so, I'll write about having peace in your homeschool and this or that. And I'll get messages where people will be like, peace in the homeschool? I don't understand.
Those 2 words don't work together.
Right, right. They don't. So yeah, I like to try to help, mamas understand that there can be peace in your homeschool and it's not an oxymoron. And so, I write about having freedom and kind of combining, I write a lot about combining Charlotte Mason with unschooling and how the two kind of go really beautifully together. Yeah,
We would be best friends in the homeschool world for sure, because that's how I did it. I was like, "Oh, Charlotte Mason, and let's just follow the kids' lead and see
exactly,
where it ends up," and
exactly.
it always ends up in a really place I never would have expected,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I
I always
like
say
that.
I always say that Charlotte Mason, is kind of like our boundaries,
Mhm.
and then we have freedom within that.
Yes, yes.
Freedom to just read and explore and, do all these things within these parameters that kind of are set for our family.
Yeah, so good. That's so good. Well, I'm excited to talk about words like honey today, and I wanna ask you just a quick question, like, what inspired you to write words like honey and focus specifically on the impact of parents' language choices?
Yeah. So I
Because
didn't
let's be honest, we're not all good with that.
No, no, I'm not at all. I didn't actually set out to write this book. I was writing a different book. And then I so one of the things I do when I write is I write for myself. I like to write what I need to remind myself of
That's so
the
good.
things that I believe in and the things that I want to implement and the things that I want to encourage me because I will take a book that inspires me and I will reread it every single year because I'm like, okay, I need to remember this. I need to. So I do the same with my writing. I'm like, this is something that I need as I need this reminder. So I'm going to write it. I'm just going to write this for myself. And I'm sure there are other people out there who could use this reminder too. So I was writing a different book and parts of that book just kind of flowed into a different book. It was just more that, the chapter got bigger and bigger and longer and longer. I'm like, this is actually its own book. And it was something that was really important to me at the time because
Yeah.
um I have a bad habit of just talking.
Yeah.
I don't even let people finish their sentences. I just start talking because I can read their minds.
Mhm.
I don't need to hear what they're going to say.
It's like we're sisters.
So I have to be very intentional in everything I do. I'm like my
Mm,
husband and I will talk about how he's the guy with his feet on the ground and I'm the kite in the air and he's, holding the string so I don't float away. So I have to be very intentional if I actually want to get anything done. And so it's the same with parenting. I need to be intentional about how I interact with my kids, how I connect with them, how I homeschool, how I do all of these things. Um, or I'm just like, what? No, what's going on? So I was being very intentional with my speech at the time. I was paying a lot of attention to what I was saying and how I was saying it.
mm,
And how my children and their different developmental stages would kind of take in what I was saying. It kind of was spawned from this thing that happened. I talk about this in the book where my daughter, she was 13 at the time, and um, we were reading Robin Hood. We're talking about, is it ever okay to steal?
mm.
Is there ever a right time? And she says, well, dad did steal that wart cream. And I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" She's like, "He stole that wart cream, all those years ago." She starts telling me this story about how we had gotten back from the store. She had been with her grandma, and grandma said, "Where'd you get that?" And my husband, because he's a joker, he said, "Oh, I
Yeah.
stole it." And just a flippant comment. And she was 5 or 6 at the time.
She remembered.
She remembered in all those years, she thought her dad had stolen this wart cream. She thought, well, I know my dad's a good man. I know he, loves God. I know all these things, but there was a time when he felt that stealing was okay. It obviously wasn't, and he hadn't stolen the cream, but we didn't know that she felt this until all these, years later. And so that really just kind of opened my eyes to the things that we say. We might say something that is just offhanded or something that is really not intentionally like, um, we don't mean it in a certain way, but our kids,
Mhm.
they're new. They're these
Yeah.
little people who've only been around for so many years, and they're
And they trust everything you say comes out of
right,
your mouth.
and they're
It's
just taking it all in. They're taking it all in. They don't always know to ask, "Is that true?" They don't always know
Mhm.
what to question. So it's just, I just started realizing that everything that we say around or to our kids impacts them.
Mhm.
And that just led to me, really trying to be intentional with the things I was saying and how I was saying them to try to look at things from their perspective and understand how they were understanding what we were saying to them. And from that
Yeah.
came this book.
Yeah. Well, I think that, language is important and our words are important. I mean, the Bible talks about our words. So much of the Bible is about our tongue and the words that we use and the way that we use them and how it's a weapon. And I think sometimes as parents, we don't stop to think about how we're coming across to our children, especially when they're young, because we just think, oh, that went over their heads. Maybe in a way it did, but they're gonna remember it, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah, they do remember it. What is the significance of honey in relationship to our words and the effect on our children? What does that
Well, the Bible says, our words are like honey,
Mhm.
sweet to the soul. Of course, I'm butchering the verse right now that my entire book is is
Based
based on.
on that's okay.
But yeah, words like honeycomb, sweet to the soul. They're it's kind words. There we go. Kind words are like honey. Yeah, so, it's just that idea, that concept that what our words should be to our children should be like honey. They should be sweet to them. They should be something that is nourishing, something that fills them and doesn't create, turmoil within them, doesn't
Yeah.
make them freeze. So many things that we say are just that seem so simple to us, like, will cause this like worry, this anxiety, this fear, and we don't even realize it. And so they're, oftentimes just living in this state of, just hyper awareness, and kind of like, oh, okay, they're, they don't need to do that. If we could just like slow down and kind of think about what we're saying and how they're taking that in, we could really avoid a lot of those those
Yeah.
kids.
And I think too, our kids, I have this saying that I read. I don't remember who said it, but it's a wise, and it's the saying, "More is caught than taught." And I think
Yeah.
about how our kids watch us and how they
Yeah.
learn from us. And
Yeah.
so, it sounds a lot like if you're using those words, if you're being intentional with your words, your children will learn to be intentional with their words.
Absolutely.
And they've got
Absolutely.
a head start on life if they learn
Yeah.
that early, right?
Right. They're not
Raise
gonna
your
be
hand
cutting
if
all
you've
the
ever
people
said
off.
something dumb, you know? So,
Yeah.
you wish you could take back, but you can't right here.
Right.
Something that I wish I would have learned early on is that not everything that you're thinking has to be said in the way
Mhm.
that you're thinking it
Right.
necessarily.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you mentioned one of the things that you mentioned in your book is about anxiety and depression on children. I think we've all seen that in this day and age in 2025, this how many children are on some sort of an anxiety regimen of some kind, either medication or some kind of therapy of some sort, and depression, and it's all on the rise. And there's a lot of contributing factors, but one of them could just be the stressed out parent who is, who the words that are coming at our kids and what that can do to their hearts and what that can do to their brain. What specific language do you think contributes? Why does language contribute to the anxiety and depression in children? And in
Well,
all of us, really.
yeah, absolutely. For kids, it's important to understand that where they are developmentally,
Yeah.
and how um, their prefrontal cortex doesn't develop fully till their mid-20s,
Mhm.
which is one of those things that contributes to their regulation. So when we say things like, for something that's so simple, a child who is not in that, whose brain is not fully developed yet, they take that in, and it's like, okay, hurry, like this is a rush. They start to feel that as a rush. They start to feel anxiety.
That's so true.
Yeah. It's just, there's such simple phrases that
Yeah.
aren't, we don't have, we're not trying to say something that is going to harm them, but they are not quite there yet.
Yeah.
And so we rushing them along. We're like, okay, we have to get out the door. So we're like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. We're just barking this phrase. And they're like, okay, okay, hurry up. What does that mean? What do I do? I gotta get my shoes, I gotta do this, all these different things. A lot of kids actually will freeze.
Yeah.
Hurry up causes a lot of kids to freeze, because then they're like, oh, this is big,
They're
and
overwhelmed.
I don't know what to do, and I
Yeah.
don't know where to go, and I have all these different things I need to do, but I have to be fast. And it just
Oh.
builds up and builds up in them. And then the more we do that, the more they're in that state, the more it becomes like a normal, natural state for them to feel that anxiety and
And
to
how many
feel,
Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
See, I told you we could be the same
Perfect.
person. And how many times do we hear parents say getting out of the house is the most stressful thing to do? It's like, it's
Absolutely.
just so stressful, and no matter how many times I try to get them to go, they just don't do it. And
Right.
then kids preemptively after a while just start crying when it's time to leave
Mhm.
because they know that
Yeah.
this anxiety that makes so much sense.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just little phrases like that
Yeah.
if we could learn to eliminate from our vocabulary, or minimize, because we're all going to say them. None of us are intentional all the time.
Right.
It's funny because
Right.
I talk in the book about how, there's one phrase that, I'm talking about why we shouldn't use it, and as I'm writing about it, I'm saying it to my son. So, I like to be fully transparent. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, so this is not something you should say, but I'm saying it right now.
So what would you say instead of "hurry up"? How would you handle that? What would be a
Okay,
better way?
a good example would be the example already used, right? That we're trying to get ready and we need to get going. And we could say something like, and it really will depend on the age of the kid. So for my
Yeah.
younger kids, I might say something like, okay, can we find our shoes? Our favorite slide at the park is waiting for us. Just something that's different, more playful, that kind of like draws them in. Oh yeah, okay, the shoes, where are they? We could say something to an older kid like, we have, dad's in the car, let's gather our things and, work together to get out there. It's just, a lot of these phrases are more about not making them personal to the child, right? Not just
Right.
barking a command, but giving them more awareness surrounding the circumstance so they can, they can process it and they
Mhm.
can not feel like everything is focusing on them and what they're doing wrong
Mm.
in this moment and how
Yeah.
they're not meeting, what we need instead
Yeah.
of, we don't want them to feel like that. We want them to understand, this is okay. We do have something we need to do, somewhere we need to go. Let's stay focused. Let's do this together. But it's not about you. It's not about what you're doing wrong. And so it's just simple little changes in phrasing. And I always say, a lot of these phrases are just, it's just about giving more description and
Yeah.
about making it not personal.
Yeah.
And if we can do that, then we can help them to do these things that need to be done without those feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the more damaging phrases that you know that are commonly used without realizing?
Yeah. Well, one phrase that, we use as a phrase of comfort, don't be sad.
Mm,
Um, it can be, that can be really, really harmful because the more we say it to our kids, the more they really take in that idea that sadness is bad. Like
yeah.
I shouldn't be sad. This is something I shouldn't be feeling.
Mm,
And that's a really tough message to give to kids because we're all going to be sad. And
yeah.
and sadness is normal. We need, like, our kids need to not feel like it's abnormal to feel sad, but instead they need to, know how to navigate sadness in a healthy manner and also know that it's okay. There's going to be times when they feel sad. There's going to be times when we all feel sad. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It
Wrong.
doesn't
Yeah.
mean um that, you're doing things in the wrong way. It just, this is a normal part of life. And so we tell them don't be sad because we're like, "Oh, it's okay. Don't be sad. Don't be sad." But we're really just cementing this idea that sadness is not an okay thing to feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that sometimes as parents, we just want to comfort them, but we aren't
Mhm.
sure what the words are that we should be saying.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just hard to navigate that, and try to understand where that's coming from. So what guidance, like, okay, so if I'm a parent, which I am, and I'm thinking to myself, man, oh man, I really needed this book 30 years ago. This would have been great. Um, so parents who have made mistakes or made, first of all, we want everybody to understand that there is so much grace
Oh, yeah.
Lord. And we say things, we do things, we aren't perfect, and forgiveness goes a long, long way, and kids are very forgiving and very wonderful about that. What are some for parents who have said things like, "Don't be sad," or "Hurry up," or "What are you doing?" kind of a thing, or, just not thinking, but because their anxiety is picking up because they know they're on a time
Yeah,
crunch. Like, my job is at stake here. I gotta get to work, and I need to drop you guys off at so and so's house, and,
exactly.
and there's things I need to do, and so I get that these things come out in the anxiety of the moment. What as far as repairing the damage after saying something harmful, what would you give us some steps on how to make
Yeah.
that
I actually do. I talk about repair a lot in the book. That's
Yeah.
one of the things because we all are there. And some of us have adult kids and we're like, that was it. I
Yep.
did this the whole time."
Yep.
And so what do we do moving forward? It's one of the things I think that is just so simplistic, but it is so powerful is I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's I acknowledging, especially with our adult children,
Yeah.
acknowledging that we didn't know or didn't understand or weren't aware of some of these things and just saying, "I wish I had done better. I'm sorry that I didn't know better at the time. I'm trying to do better now." Even saying things such as, "Let me know if there's anything specific that I said or I did that you're still hanging on to." It's a humility, but it's a lot of kids grow up and come not to expect humility from their parents and come not to
Yeah.
expect apologies. And so if that's not a normal part, hasn't been a normal part of your parenting and your relationship with your child, then those apologies will go so far for them to just be able to say, "Wow, okay, you're sorry." I mean, I apologies are a big thing in my house, but I know like we have a friend who has told us that his mom never apologized his entire childhood. And he's been over at our house when, we've had some things apologized to our kids for, and he's just like, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. So apologies are are they're huge. And another part of repair is really for us, especially if we're still in that raising children time, is just understanding our triggers, understanding the things that make us say the things we don't want to say. If we can like kind of become aware of our triggers and what is making them happen, what is triggering them, what is triggering our triggers, just the whole process, then we are able to, become intentional about what we do in those moments and what we do when those things happen.
Yeah.
And even in repairing when those things happen. Like I know when I am triggered by something and I say something I don't want to say to one of my kids, I will then say, you know what, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said that to you. And I'll sometimes explain my triggers. I'll say, you know what? I have a really hard time with this. I'm working on it. I'm working on that. And I'm sorry that I reacted in that way or that I said this to you.
Yeah.
It's just so much of repairing is just apologizing and awareness and
Mhm.
humility. And parents can have a hard time with humility. A lot of us were raised with that mentality that, you just we're the parent and this is how it goes. And I don't want to show my faults to my kids. I don't want
Mhm.
to, but that isn't sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not. And we're seeing an entire generation now that is becoming adults that was parented with those ideas from their parents. And they're no, like I don't want anything to do with that. A lot of them are even, leaving their faith, leaving all these different things because it it kind of just all fell on deaf ears and now it just seems shallow to them.
Mhm.
So if we can learn to humble ourselves and learn to show and learn to be transparent about ourselves with our children,
Mhm.
then it will do wonders. So when we do fail and when we do say the thing unintentionally that we don't want to say, we just pick ourselves back up, try again. If the situation calls for it, apologize. Because to be honest, I'm not saying I'm sorry every time I say hurry up.
Yeah. No.
I'm
I'm
not
sorry.
like,
Hurry up.
oh,
I'm
I'm sorry.
sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. No, that's just about, intention and trying to learn to eliminate that from what we're saying. But then with the harsher things and the things that go a little deeper,
Yeah.
we repair.
Yeah. I love that. I think one of the things that I've learned as a mom of adult children is I do sometimes just say to them, "Gosh, I think that you do that so much better than I did. And I just really appreciate that you are growing and becoming and doing it better so that
Yeah.
our grandkids don't have to struggle with the things that we all struggled with or
Yeah.
I mean, I just to let them also know because I do a lot of apologizing with my
Yeah.
adult. I'm
So
so
do
sorry.
I.
I I didn't realize. Now it's since I've started this podcast because all you all are so smart. And I'm like, "Oh, I need to apologize to my kids again because we talked about this with an author." And I'm like, "Oh, now I got to make some phone calls." But my kids are so great cuz they're like, "Oh, mom." Because
Yeah.
overall, here's the thing that your kids do know that you love them.
Yep.
They know
Exactly.
that. They know you're
Exactly.
not perfect. Again, more is caught than taught. They're learning themselves that when they
Yep.
say something, it's okay for them to go to that person and go, "I didn't mean to hurt you. I might have said that harshly, or I may have come across in a way that I didn't intend to. And if that made you feel anxious or sad, I apologize for that. I would never want to do that. Please let me know." And I can do that now as an adult, like when I'm working with somebody or something. One of the first things I say to them is, I'm a problem solver, and sometimes you don't want your problem to be solved by me, you just wanna process. So,
Exactly.
you have
Exactly.
permission to say to me, "Hey, Dale, thanks for the advice, but really all I wanna do is process." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay."
One of the things that I try to say, especially to my teens and young
Mhm.
adults,
Mhm.
is, when they come to me, It's, are you looking for advice or do you just want me to listen?
Yes. And that is so helpful to them because it makes them realize that you get that sometimes you're just not really you think you're helping. And then it also helps them to understand that, well, mom thinks she's helping, but she's really, it
Right.
just opens up the communication, makes it just everybody on the same playing field and expectations are there. And adult children, man, they're an interesting thing. We're gonna do a whole series on that, I think, someday.
You should.
But also in your book, In Words Like Honey, you talked a little bit about repair, but you also have rethink, replace, reframe, and then repair. Can you just kind of walk us through those steps? Rethink, replace, reframe, repair.
Yeah, so for each in the book I give some certain phrases and then also, say there are other phrases out there not in this book, right? That you may, as you are thinking things through, kind of realizing that's not necessarily a healthy phrase to say. And so for each phrase, I say that we can do one or all of these things depending on the phrase and our personal circumstances, which is to rethink,
Yeah.
kind of, think about what this phrase means, what we were talking about before. What is this? What am I actually saying to my child? What are they understanding from this? Kind of rethink. Is this a healthy phrase? Wait, rephrase. Is it rephrase and then rephrase?
That's okay. I kinda dropped it on you
Yeah,
unexpectedly.
no, no, it's down. I'm just trying to remember the order. So rephrase, then we have, is how can we say this differently? What if this is the message that we do want to send, we do want to say this, send this message, but this is not how we want to, or the thing we want to say because of, kind of the connotation behind it, then how can we rephrase it
Mm,
to say this in a healthy way or a way that they're going to better understand? And then reframe is kind of, maybe we don't actually need to say this specific thing. What can we say instead? Like, what can we, how can we reframe this idea and say it in a different way?
mm.
And then repair is when all else fails, or when we
Say
need
you're
to,
sorry.
or if this is where we are, we say sorry. We figure out our triggers. We do things differently.
Yeah. One thing that I noticed, one of my kids does this with their child is actually 2 of them do it with their children, is when they're trying to get out the door, and they notice that things are kind of like they're going, "Oh, I notice you're a little frustrated or overwhelmed. What do you need me to do to help you? How can I help?
Yeah,
Did you forget your backpack? Do you need me to help you put your shoes on?
yeah, that's
Did you
great.
lose your coat? Can we find let's go look for your coat." And they
Exactly.
always also learn to start getting out the door a lot earlier than they originally
Oh yeah,
thought that they give
yeah.
yourself an additional
Well,
15 minutes
you
more than you
learn
think.
those things, right? It's like, what do I need to tell them about ahead of time?
Yep.
What do we need to pre-plan? Do we need to
Getting
lay
things
all of
done
our
the night
shoes out
before
the
as
night
much as
before?
possible.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. You
Yep.
kind of learn the rhythms of the way that your family works, and that also helps to
Yeah.
mitigate, some of these things.
Yeah. I just think the whole way that you've got it, that, the rethink, reframe, rephrase, I've got that all backwards, but you know what I mean. And repair is just such a great way to remind ourselves, okay, this is what I want to say.
Hmm.
How can I say the same thing, but in a way that isn't quite so confrontational or
Yeah,
jarring? Yeah.
exactly.
So for parents feeling overwhelmed, okay, in this day and age, if there is one thing that we have all learned is that we have to watch every single word that comes out of our mouth
Right.
because we're going to offend everybody.
No,
But what's and that's not what this is, right? Let's be
no, no.
honest, Amy. This isn't speech monitoring. This isn't, making sure that you're being intentional
Yeah,
with what you're doing, and so that it's thinking about how is that actually coming across, and ask your child, when I say to you this, I notice you get something happens. What does that make you feel when I say this? And is there something I can do differently? Have your child be in on that conversation.
yeah,
That's a great conversation to have.
absolutely.
And we're not talking the rest of the world out there, even though that's probably something, if you're doing it in your own home and it's normal practices in your own home, it's going to
Yeah,
outflow out of that into your workplace or into your homeschooling
absolutely.
world or your church world or wherever you
Yeah.
are. But if you're feeling overwhelmed because you're feeling like, gosh, now I've got to monitor every single word I say in my own house, it's like that's not really what we're saying. But what's
Right.
one simple thing that they can do that will have the most positive effect today on their, or how about this month?
Yeah.
Let's be real.
No, that's a good question. What is one simple thing? I mean, I would say just start to rethink.
Yeah.
Just start to rethink and kind of um just, here or there
Mhm.
when you say something or when you think of something, just think about where is my child in life and how is that going to impact them or how are they going to take that in? If we can just start rethinking,
Mm.
then I think everything else on its own will kind of, it'll happen.
Yeah.
It'll mellow out.
It all comes together.
But yeah, it's just having that intention.
Yeah.
From rethinking is intention. It's just considering our
Yeah.
words.
And your goal for Words Like Honey, like influential goal of like how it influences families and reframes things. What is your, what is your hope for this generation going on to the next generation of parents of young children, like, the millennials and the Gen Zers that are now, coming up and raising young kids and hopefully doing it far better than we did. And just how does that what is your goal with that with communication to children?
It's really just helping families to flourish, helping kids to grow healthy. If we want to have a generation of kids who are becoming adults who are healthy human beings.
Yeah.
They're strong in their relationships. They're strong with their emotional intelligence. They're strong in their faith. They are kind and good and love people. And they just, I
Mm.
think that all of this really starts at home. And so we talk about, everybody will talk about, how to parent and what you need to do and how you discipline and how you do this or how you do that. But the words and the way we say things kind of gets put on the back burner because they're
Yeah.
just so, especially, the things we don't, that aren't necessarily those harmful things. We're not all out there saying terrible, horrible things to our kids, and we know that. So we don't really think about the simple things that we may be saying to our
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
And so, really, it's just how we can go take one more step to raise healthy, whole children.
Yeah, so good. Amy, is your book I didn't check this yet, but is your book on pre-order on Amazon or anything yet?
Yeah,
Or
it is.
it is. Okay, so the link will be in the description of this podcast. For Words Like Honey, you can pre-order it. It's coming out September 9th. If you pre-order now, then you will get it right away,
Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah.
And, guys, thinking about when it's coming out September, if you have a mom who like baby shower gifts, Christmas presents, birthday presents, things that something you guys could do as a homeschool co-op. A lot of co-ops like to come together and have moms come together while the kids are taking classes and they do like a book study. This would be a great book study and you can hold each other accountable and talk about it and just be honest with each other and vulnerable with each other. And in this day and age, I mean, our kids go a long way watching us be vulnerable and open and honest about where we're at because then it teaches them that it's not wrong to be vulnerable and open and honest about where you really are on things and to have people speak truth into your life. And so thank you so much, Amy. And if you
Thank
haven't
you.
already, guys, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with a friend. We appreciate your support. Homeschool Minnesota podcast is an outreach of Minnesota Association of Christian Home Educators. So, Michelle, you hear us talk about it occasionally on here. We're so grateful. Don't forget, every Monday, Thursday, we have new episodes coming out. Every Monday coming out this month through July is our special series on biblical self-care. If you guys didn't think you needed it, you're wrong. Straight up, you're wrong. I didn't realize how stressed out I was until I listened to this week's episode. So no, it's just good to be mindful of where we are with our walk with the Lord and where we are in our family and in our life and how we can be better moms, better dads, better parents, better homeschoolers, better Christians, better citizens, better people. So yeah, so just don't forget, guys, and thank you so much. And Amy, thank you so much for coming on today and speaking to our listeners about your book. I'm excited to get my copy and to be reading through it. And I'm really excited to just hear about how successful it is and having you on again to talk about homeschooling things.
Oh, yeah, that would be fun.
I would love that. So thank you guys so much and have a great day.